If you're looking to get your AI or SaaS product off the ground and you're looking to fund it by raising a pre-seed, the first natural step is to actually build an MVP, right? Well, maybe not in this fundraising environment. In today's fundraising environment, pre-seed company, pre-revenue company, trying to just build an MVP and going to investors and trying to raise money is pretty much dead on arrival. So here's the big question. How do you actually raise your pre-seed or your seed round so that you can get your company off the ground? In this episode, I'm gonna walk you through my 3-step framework on raising your seed or pre-seed funding. And when you implement these 3 steps, you are gonna be able to walk into every investor meeting with tons of swagger, tons of certainty, and you're gonna be able to raise that next round so that you can actually build a company of your dreams. Now, as a startup founder myself, I have raised from the best angel investors. I've raised from Jason Calacanis, from Esther Dyson, from Dave McClure. I've also raised from some of the best seed funds. I raised from Founder Collective and even Altair Capital. In fact, I was one of their first US investments when they were really getting the fund off the ground. And if you pull on that thread even more, I raised my Series A from Jackson Square Ventures and my Series B from Andreessen Horowitz. Having successfully raised from pre-seed to seed to Series A to Series B and then exiting my company, I've gone through the ebbs and flows of fundraising. I used to live in San Francisco at the time, and I was to take that drive down to Sand Hill Road because at that time, all the VCs weren't parked up in San Francisco yet. And it was one of those rites of passage. And it was one of the most beautiful drives, but also one of the most miserable drives. And since then, since exiting my company, I've helped so many founders with their fundraising and their pitch decks. And as I look at pitch decks today, as I look at founders raising today, I'm starting to realize that the game has changed, especially when it comes to pre-seed and seed and AI companies. So in this episode, I'm gonna walk you through my 3 steps to actually being effective in your fundraising. And by the way, all of the principles that I'm covering, the 3 steps that I'm gonna be covering in this episode, I go in depth in them. So if you're in this stage where you are fundraising, you should grab my free copy of my Unstoppable Fundraising Blueprint that goes way more in depth into the 3 steps that I'm going to be walking you through. It's completely free. So if you want a copy of it, just comment Blueprint below and I'll link you to it in the comments. The first thing that I want to highlight is the lines are blurring between pre-seed and seed. And I meet a lot of founders that are coming to me and saying, hey, I'm gonna do a pre-seed round. I can do that, right? And I'm like, well, it kind of depends. Which brings me to step number 1. Step number 1 in your fundraising process that I learned the hard way is you have to decide, are you raising based on traction or are you raising based on pedigree and promise? Let me explain what the difference is between the 2. So let's take pedigree first. Pedigree is if you're a founder and you were one of the original employees or one of the founders of OpenAI. Then you have pedigree. If you were one of the early employees of a really, really successful startup. I'm not talking like you were employee number 50,000 at Google because that doesn't count anymore, that's not special. But you were foundational in a successful startup and you have pedigree. At that point, you can go to most investors and without an MVP and with just an idea and a pitch deck, you can say, hey, I want to raise a pre-seed round. And you would be very successful in raising that round. A lot of these rounds that you see where it's a $10 billion pre-seed round, it's really going to founders with pedigree. Now, if you have pedigree, then you don't really have to follow step number 2. You can just jump to step number 3, which I'll be covering shortly. But if you don't have pedigree, or if you have a little bit of pedigree, then you're left with what most founders have to deal with, what I had to deal with, which is you need to show some traction. Now, what does traction mean? Traction breaks down into active users, people actually using your product. It breaks down into actual revenues. It can't just be a wait list of people that say they're gonna buy from you. It's people actually using the product and paying for it in some shape or form. And on top of that, with those active users and with the revenue that you have, it has to kind of show, and this is particularly true in AI today, it has to show some sign of durability, meaning they're not churning on month number 3. They're actually using the product and continuing to use it, and that means they're getting value from it. Now, once you have that, you might be wondering, TK, how am I gonna build all that And how am I going to do all of that without funding? Like maybe you have a job and you have to quit your job, or maybe you have to recruit a team, or maybe you don't know how to code and you don't know how to vibe code. A trap that I see founders fall into when they're trying to figure out how do I just get some initial traction, some credible in front of the eyes of the investors because I don't have the full pedigree that I need to land the $10 billion round. The thing that I always tell them is like, look, you don't need to build a complete product. What you really need to be building is one use case. Figure out how to build your product in a way where you're solving one urgent and important problem, and that problem is getting solved with at least one use case in the product where the users are saying, you know, no one else can solve this problem in this way, and you're doing it and you're starting to do it, and I can see there's more, so I'll trust you. Let's start using more of it. You're getting those early adopters on board. So that's really the first thing to make a decision on in your fundraising process. Are you going to be raising on traction, or are you going to be raising on pedigree? And for 99% of the founders that are out there that are building, it's really going to have to be more about traction than about pedigree. And even if you have the pedigree, here's the thing. I know lots of founders that have the pedigree, but they also know better. They're like, look, I know I can call up that investor and I can raise that round, but then the clock starts ticking and I have to figure out if this is going to work or not. And I've also leveraged my relationship now. So maybe I should first get some traction and then use the pedigree to raise an even bigger round. So even the pro founders or the second time founders or the founders that have true pedigree, wait a moment to really get the traction. Ultimately, traction is the hero of your fundraising story. The more traction you have, the more effective you're going to be in your fundraising process, which I know is both frustrating and kind of counterintuitive because you're like, well, if I have traction, why do I need the money? Well, welcome to entrepreneurship. Everyone thinks that investors are there to give you a lottery ticket to fulfill your dreams. And that's not really true. They're there because they have LPs, they have bosses, and they have to answer to those people. And they have to say, here's why I'm making this investment, and here's why it's going to be successful. And here are the proof points that makes me believe that this can be huge. And traction is an important part of that. Team and pedigree is just as important, but traction trumps everything. And it's the hero of your fundraising. So once you have this decision made, are we going to raise on traction? Or are we going to raise on pedigree? Then we get into step number 2 of the fundraising process. Step number 2, you might be wondering, is, well, how do I get traction? Now, this is where I get a lot more tactical. The thing that I've learned is this whole MVP model is dead. And by the way, Eric Ries, the author of the book, The Lean Startup, was an angel investor. And I love that book. And at that time, it made a ton of sense. But today, in 2025, in 2026, whenever you're watching this, in the time of vibe coding, in the time where you can literally build an application, add a Stripe payment link, and start to prove some problems are being solved, the investor bar is higher, which means a minimum viable product, the entire definition of it has completely shifted. And on top of that, having met so many founders, having gone through this journey myself, founders often go wrong because they first build a product and then they figure out, how do I get it funded? Or how do I actually go market it? And how do I sell it? And how do I earn some money? Setting yourself up for success means you actually don't follow the MVP process. I think the MVP process is setting you up for failure. Instead, the process that I like to follow is my MGP framework. It's not complicated. M stands for market, G stands for go-to-market, and P stands for product. Let's break down how this actually comes together. So under how to get traction, if you follow the MGP framework, the first thing that you really want to be doing is identifying a market. That's the first thing. What's the market we're going after? And more specifically, what is the urgent and important problem that is going unsolved? This is where it gets a little nuanced. It has to be urgent and important. And I've worked with so many founders in the launch stages. I've worked on companies myself where we wasted months building the wrong product because we weren't tethered to a real urgent and important problem, or the problem that we thought we were solving just wasn't important enough and urgent enough for people to actually prioritize solving it. So the first step that you really want to do to get traction is identify the urgent and important problem in the specific market that you want to be going after. Now, there's a cheat code, especially today in 2025, going into 2026 and onwards. Who knows, maybe you're watching this video in 2027. These YouTube videos live forever. We have a cheat code. The cheat code is there can be lots of problems that were solved, and they were solved problems, but all of a sudden, because of AI, you can solve it in a 10 times better way. Maybe it requires less humans, less clicks, less money, less time, or it just wasn't solved and now can be solved with AI. And every investor that's actually making investments today, they know that there has to be some sort of AI component, otherwise it's a little bit of a non-starter. So if you're going for a traditional CRUD application that's on SaaS, and you're like, this is gonna be huge, well, that's gonna be a hard sell to investors. So you have a little cheat code. You can use AI to uniquely solve these urgent and important problems in a 10 times better way. Once you've identified the urgent and important problem, you then wanna approach this market, the specific people that's in this market with this urgent and important problem, and offer to solve that problem for them. And you actually want to charge money. And I've seen this done in different ways where you can build the minimum product that solves that one use case and you show it to them. Now, if you can't do that, if you literally can't vibe code that, well, then you can actually say, hey, we're gonna solve this problem through services. We will spin up custom AI agents for you and actually solve this. And then we will actually turn it into a full product on the back end. Which brings me to the third problem. When you are offering to charge for solving the problem, it doesn't have to be a full product solution. It could be services. It could be some mix of humans and AI. At the end of the day, and this is the thing that I always have to remind founders and I have to remind myself, at the end of the day, no one actually wants more software. They actually want the solution that the software brings. So in your case, maybe you build the MVP and you incorporate AI and you actually have that use case and you charge them for it. Or you say, hey, look, my team and I will solve this problem for you. We will custom build the solution for you. We're gonna charge you this much. Is this urgent and important enough for you to get solved? And as you do that for the first 10 customers, you can productize it on the back end and continue with your traction. This is a big differentiator. There's a bunch of things that are harder in this fundraising market. For example, you can't just raise on an MVP with no revenues and a wait list. But on the other side, you can build a product faster than ever. And at the end of the day, it doesn't even have to be product. It could be some mix of services and custom builds to actually solve the problem, which then gets productized. So that's super powerful. So that's the first pillar. The first pillar is decide on traction versus pedigree. And the second pillar is get traction. And don't follow the MVP model. Nothing against it, just doesn't work as well right now, but follow the MGP model. Once you have traction, then you can start to go into pillar number 3. Pillar number 3 is where you actually start to attract investors. And this is where you can just imagine. I'm gonna get into exactly how to attract investors and how to win these investments, but just imagine the level of swagger you're gonna walk into. Just imagine the level of swagger you're gonna walk in with in those investor meetings. You're not gonna say, hey, I have this crazy idea, here's a pitch deck, here's our MVP, and here's our 1,000-person wait list. You're gonna be like, listen, we work with 10 customers. We identified this urgent and important problem. We solved it for them. Here's how much money we made. We're now starting to productize it, and we really want to make sure that we're setting it up the right way, which is why we're raising money. But here's the traction we have. Here's the proof points that we have, and we want to go faster because when we nail this, here's how big the opportunity is going to be. Here's how many more people there are in this market with the same urgent and important problem that we can solve and continue to charge for. So the way you approach fundraising completely shifts when you have traction. You get that level of swagger. Now, all the pieces that go into actually raising money now is covered inside of my Unstoppable Fundraising Blueprint. It's completely free, so if you want a copy of it, just comment blueprint below and I'll send you the link for that. Now let's keep going. How do you actually attract these investors? This is where the fundamental question is, do I go warm or cold? Now, I mentioned to you the investor docket that I had, but what I didn't tell you is I went to San Francisco with no network, barely a network. I knew a couple of people, and for whatever reason, they were friends of mine. I didn't want to bother them with it. I wanted to do it on my own. So I didn't ask for just, hey, can you just hook me up with an investment? I built out that docket of investors. I wanted the best of the best investors, and I manifested it in a way, and it all came together. Now, the question is, do you just go cold email all those people, or do you get warm introductions? I'm a big believer in going warm instead of cold. Every investor will tell you, hey, my email inbox is open, or fill out the form on my website, or I always take cold meetings and I'll take cold pitch meetings. That's true, but let's just pretend for a second that you are an investor and you have two things you could focus on in the morning. One is a warm introduction from another investor that you trust or another founder that you trust, and the other is a cold email. Which one are you going to look at first? Which one are you going to take more seriously? Which one are you going to prioritize? Which one are you going to make faster decisions on? The one where a partner investor is already investing, or a completely cold email? You know the answer, which is why I'm a big believer in making sure that I approach my target investors with warm introductions. Now, here's how to actually break this down and make it tactical. The first thing is you want to now build out your pitch deck with the right traction. Inside of my Unstoppable Fundraising Blueprint, I have my 12-slide template for pitch decks with custom training on how to actually build it out. Now, once you have your pitch deck and the traction and your swagger, because you have real customers with real revenues and you deeply understand the urgent and important problem you're solving and how big the market can be, you'll be able to tell your story the right way. Now, once you have that, the next thing, and this is what I did and this is what I coach founders to do, is land angel investors. Angel investors are not people that are investing other people's money. They are investing their own money. Some of the early angel investors that I landed were the ones that introduced me to those tier 1 investors. And that's why I was able to raise from the likes of Jackson Square Ventures and Andreessen Horowitz. That's what made it really, really powerful. Now, angel investors are actually easier to pitch. They're other founders just like you further along in the journey, or they're engineers in large organizations. The key here is to target angel investors that know and have domain knowledge about the urgent and important problem you're solving. I'll give you an example. For me, my last company, Kader, when I was fundraising for it, I was building an email platform. At that point, we hadn't figured out that it was going to be the sales engagement category, so I was building a broader email platform. And so I specifically targeted angel investors, people that were already intimately familiar with the email space. And because I did that, I actually tapped into what's called the email mafia. One of my first angel investors was Josh Baer. He runs Capital Factory. And I went to South by Southwest, I hunted him down, and I said, hey, I'm building an email company. I would really like you to invest. And he said, listen, I'm buying a new house. My wife said, no more angel investments right now, so I can't do it. Even though I wanted to, I love email, I just can't do it. I'm like, listen, it's okay if you don't do it. I still want you on, and I want you involved in some way because I'm building an email platform, and you know everything about this. At the time I knew, Josh actually had a really cool car, and his license plates literally said email. This was the guy that wanted to be part of email platforms. So he said, okay, fine, come by the office tomorrow and I'll check out a demo. And I showed up in the office the next day in the middle of South by Southwest, and he looked at my demo. And on the spot, he said, you know what? Screw it, I'm in. And he was one of my first angel investors. Through that network, I landed more angel investors that absolutely loved email. And that brings us to step number 3. Ask your angel investors for other angel investors that love this theme, that love this problem, that has domain knowledge. And ask your angel investors and every subsequent angel investor that you land for pre-seed VCs and seed VCs that would be interested in this deal. This is how you get warm intros. The biggest thing about cold email, and I know a lot about cold email because I started ToutApp and we were one of the first cold emailing platforms. We pioneered the sales engagement category. Everyone thinks it's about personalization. Weird personalization like, hey, I saw that you also went to RPI. I was in Albany the other day. It's like, that's not real personalization. They're like, yeah, you had a database field. It showed that I went to RPI, got it. Real personalization, real ways to break through cold email is to find commonalities. And this is why this warm method, the commonalities works really well. So when you actually say, hey, you love investing in email platforms, you know a ton of email, your last startup was about changing email and transforming email, I'm building an email company, would you be interested? All of a sudden, even if that's a cold pitch, or in my case, a pitch in the middle of South by Southwest, it makes a ton of sense. It's not even that cold anymore, it's actually super warm because you found the commonality. And this is why this method works really well. Number one, you want to build your pitch deck with your traction numbers. Number two, you want to find angel investors that know a lot about the urgent and important problem that you're solving. And then number three, you want to land those angels and ask them for intros to more investors that have the commonality of investing in that type of company and that type of problem. And that builds momentum. Now, the big thing that you also want to remember as you kick off this fundraising process is even the pro founders that have raised billions of dollars will tell you it is still a grueling process. It is a distracting process, but at the same time, you cannot let fundraising slow down your traction numbers. The moment you start fundraising, you still have to make sure you're operating your go-to-market machine so that you're continuing to build that traction, continuing to improve the product. And I know you might say, well, that sucks and that's hard. I was a solo founder, but I still found a way to do it. And honestly, that's just the rules of the game. That's the entry ticket to actually win this lottery. It can be very deceiving. You can go on TechCrunch and you can go on Twitter or LinkedIn, wherever it is. It seems like every single day someone's raising $68 million. But remember, those articles are just a small fraction of founders who successfully raise. The rest don't. And for those successful founders, they figured out a way to figure out how to get traction, how to get actual angels, how to get warm intros all at once. And you need to do that too. The last piece of advice in this pillar that I'll tell you when you are raising is you don't have to raise the full amount right away. This is something that I did. I actually did what we called, at that time, it wasn't quite called a pre-seed, it was called an advisory round. I did like a $250,000 advisory round, and then I did a $900,000 seed round, and then I did a $3.3 million Series A, and then I did a $15 million Series B. Now, just times all of those numbers by 10, adjusted for inflation, and the boom times, those are the numbers people target today. But at the same time, I did them in tranches. So you don't have to raise it all at once. Depending on how you structure your round, it doesn't have to be a price round. It could just be a safe round. At the end of the day, you just need to raise on what you need. Don't try to optimize for raising whatever money is available to you because it does get dilutive. And this is one of the things that's really tough with accelerators. They'll take 7% and they may give you a lot of value or they may not, but that's a lot of percentage to give away right in the beginning, especially if you don't even know if there's a product market fit yet. So the thing that I always say is if you need to raise in tranches for what you need. Maybe it's to hire that one extra engineer. Maybe it's to fuel the go-to-market machine and run more ads. But figure out what you need to get to the next traction point and raise in tranches. One of the things that happened consistently is I wrote out a monthly investor update for every investor that came on. And sure enough, on our way to our Series A, every single investor update, every single time I sent it out, I remember there was one time Dave McClure just wrote back and said, hey, can I put in more money? And that happened over and over with multiple investors because when they see the momentum building, they're like, look, I want to build a bigger position. And as long as I get a discount, I'll even do it to the Series A. And that's perfectly fine. So you can raise in tranches as you build up traction. And remember what I said in the beginning, traction is the hero in your fundraising process. So don't just try to build an MVP and go try to raise money, get traction, even if you have that pedigree. And in order to get traction, figure out how you can get to solve the urgent and important problem, even if you don't have a full product yet. And then as you start to get traction, then get the investors. But when you get it, follow the warm intro process instead of just going cold. So let's recap on the 3 steps that I covered. Number 1, you want to first decide on do you go based on traction versus pedigree. Number 2, you want to then figure out how to get traction. And number 3, you then want to attract investors, but don't go in cold, go in warm. Start with angels that you have commonality with because they have domain knowledge on the problem you're solving, and then expand through their network and build momentum. And remember, you don't have to raise all of it at once, you can raise it in tranches. So now you know exactly how to structure your fundraising process so that you're set up for success. Now, if you want to go deeper into how to follow each of these steps, you should grab a copy of my Unstoppable Fundraising Blueprint. This blueprint is hosted inside of what I call Unstoppable OS. It's my entire operating system on launching, scaling, and exiting SaaS and AI companies. It's completely free. So if you'd like a copy, just comment below with blueprint and I'll send you the link. Or you can grab it by following this QR code. Or if you want it right away and you don't want to wait, you can just go into the description and follow the links in there where you can actually onboard into my Unstoppable OS and get access to the full Unstoppable Fundraising Blueprint. Now remember, it is a crazy and amazing time to be building companies. Fundraising is hard. It is not for the faint of heart, but you will get there. Just follow the steps, take it a step at a time, and as you build momentum, incredible things are going to happen. I'm super pumped for you. Now, here's what's next. The big thing that you're really gonna have to figure out as you navigate this fundraising process is how to get traction. So as you're building out your new product, you should next check out this video. This is a step-by-step process that I walk you through on how to launch a new product. That way you don't waste months building the wrong thing and you actually get traction. Just click on the link there or follow the link in the description to watch that episode. I want to thank you for watching. I sincerely hope you got value from this video and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody.